Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today and sit with us through this conversation today. We have an amazing topic today, creating my identity as a mujer. And we're going to be digging a little bit more into Latina womanhood and some of the things that drive sometimes our thinking, our decisions, and just we're going to just go in there a little bit. And I'm Dr. Sierra. I am the founder and executive director of Ana Sierra Counseling. We are a private practice in Washington, D.C., and we serve the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. And we primarily work with the Latinx community here in the area. And I'm so happy to here today to have Claudia Parada with us. Claudia, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I am super excited to be here. My name is Claudia Parada. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist from San Francisco, California. I work with young Latinx women in the entire state of California. I work virtually. And it is my dream to be working with my folks, with my community. So I'm super happy to be talking about this topic. It's near and dear to my heart, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Like I said,
That's awesome. And I know you have a lot of experience working with Latinas and being Latinas too. I think brings in a perspective that it's going to be a really, really fruitful conversation. And if you're watching or if you are on and you can send us questions through the comments, I'll be monitoring those as we go. So feel free to send us any kind of questions as we go, and we can get ready to start. So I have a question here, Claudia. What does it mean to be Latina? What is this identity that, to be honest, when I came to the United States, I didn't know that would be my label, like in my
mm-hmm.
profile. Because in my country, I was just a girl, a woman. I will be a woman or a girl.
Exactly.
Y aquí esto de Latina. What is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a. I feel like it's such a complex question, and I was like reflecting on it before we came on today, um, and it feels like it runs really deep, for me. And the reason being is one because on the one hand, I think that it's such an identity that can mean so many different things to the individual, right?
Mhm.
And then I think for me, it involves. It's almost like a transformative process in like the way in which I relate to that label and my understanding of the history of Latin America and through colonization and also
Right.
my family's migration pattern. So like I feel that maybe to answer the question a little bit more directly, when I think about being Latina, I think about my mixed origin. When I think about like my family's from Nicaragua, right, and that we know that those are borders that were placed on our folks that are indigenous folks that were living in
Right.
what is Latin America today. So I'm thinking about my indigeneity, and I'm thinking about my African ancestry, and I'm also thinking about my colonizer blood, my European bloodlines as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also considering like, yeah, like one of like what you said, which was like your experience was that, oh, I never considered myself to be a Latina. I just was like, I just am a person,
Right.
right? And so in the context of the US,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to like label everybody and understand what's your race, what's your ethnicity, like it has
Mm-hmm.
these different implications. And so for me being first gen, I grew up in like a predominantly white school, and so I would be really like, yeah, I'm Nicaragüense, I'm Latina. Like it was like a
Mm-hmm.
thing that I was like very blunt and direct about saying. Like,
Right.
plus it's not like I could hide it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would not. Yeah, it would be amiss to not talk about the history of it, and then also like the beauty and all the culture of
Right.
like the family and um
Right.
yeah. I mean, there's another side to that too, which I think we're going to get into as well. But that's my long-winded answer of those are all the things that come up in me.
Yeah, yeah, and to get to the process, I think it does require that self-awareness part of it, because to be honest, coming from Latin America, and being raised there up to the age of 14, I was just a girl, and also in Latin America, colorism is such a huge problem that over there you don't want to associate with your indigenous blood, you don't
Hmm.
want to associate with your African descent blood, you don't want those things, right? Because because we know that we live in a culture like, well, in Honduras and in many places in Latin America, that you don't want to be associated with the group of people that are mistreated, oppressed, right? And also seen as the bad people, the negative. So colorism definitely took a big part on just understanding that in us. But and then coming to the US, I'm like, what is this Latina thing? I don't know what it is. And
Hmm.
I remember learning about this label and hearing all negative things like, you are a girl that's going to get pregnant when she's a teenager, you're going to drop out of
Mm.
school, you're not going to make it that far. So the label that I associated that name with, that label, that Latina, was negative. So I was
Hmm.
picking up this negativity from that. I didn't want to be associated with being Latina at some
For
point.
sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really resonating a lot with what you're saying. I'm remembering too, like really having this internalized experience of being like, oh
Right.
no, but I'm like a different type
I'm
of
a
Latina.
different
I'm not
Latina.
like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think when I'm thinking about it, it does make me very sad. I think there's a lot of grief there in that, like,
Hmm.
I wish that I had learned earlier on that that was a concept. Um, that it's not really my own. Like, I know
Exactly.
now that I don't need
Hmm.
to other myself to be, quote unquote, "be better,"
Yes.
right? But yeah, like, I think I was just absorbing the messages that were given around me, and it was to, no, differentiate yourself from those around you. You wanna be the good model, the good minority model, essentially.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
wanna fit in too. You wanna be successful. You wanna assimilate. You wanna do all of those things, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what makes you different. So I think that for it's kind of like a learning process, going from rejecting that label to embracing that label to actually understanding where I come from, right? Like, in my own
Mhm.
perspective, in like understanding that we are mixed people in the Americas,
Mhm.
and Latina is really like a label to say something about, like, to put us in a place, but like it also brings in all of these other values, right, that come with them. And I wanted to kind of jump into a little bit more of, what do women or Latinas grow up hearing about this, right, in our cultures? What is our role in life? What are our messages that we get from family, culture, society? How do we create this label, and how do we progress through that?
Oh, girl, like, I just, oh my god, just so much just came up in me, and I'm like, I bet we could, like, field responses from people,
Yeah,
and just yeah, I was just thinking about so many different messages that I've received as, like,
right.
behave yourself in class, like, again, you wanna be the,
Yeah.
um, calladita, la mujercita, like, una buena niña, like, all of those
Mhm,
different, like, 'cause I went to Catholic school, which is like a whole thing,
mhm.
right? But, like, being prudent, like, I
Mhm,
was
mhm.
really, like, wild because I would, like, wanna talk to my friends and stuff in class, and so, yeah, they would always just tell me, like, a lot of focus on, like, lots of focus on being prudent, lots of focus on being conservative in the way that I
Mhm.
dress, and I think that we brought this up too um when we were talking, which was like, I need to protect myself and my behaviors. Like, I need to make sure that I'm not attracting the wrong kind of attention
Mhm,
because
mhm.
men can't control themselves. So I need to be the one.
Exactly.
Mhm. And then, of course, like the very gendered, like you clean the house, you make the food, you submit to your husband, like
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
And you
It
just like keep it all together. You are the
Mhm.
glue of the household.
Exactly, exactly. And like also your role in life is to be a mother and a wife. Like
Yes. Oh my
that
gosh, which
is
is
your
s
sole
s
purpose in life.
such a spot of, I was just thinking, like, it's such a spot that was out of my awareness because, like, it's my day-to-day reality, but absolutely,
Yeah.
like, you're so oh, we were li my medicine sister and I were just talking about that today. Like, they came over and they were just like, "Wow, we are so indoctrinated
Mhm.
to find that one partner,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
man."
And it should be a fairy tale. It should be a fairy tale,
Yeah.
where you're chastened by them and where
Yeah.
you are conquered and where you
Oh,
are,
oh,
this display of love, like novelas, right? It has
yeah.
to be that fairy tale because that's what you're supposed to believe. That's what will bring you like happiness and fulfillment in life.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then when you said the word conquered, I was like, wow, what is happening
Right.
in that? Where it's like oh wow, there's so much there because obviously the conquistadores and like, oh,
Exacto. Es lo
there's so
mismo.
much there. Yeah. And then to my bless my mama's heart. I love her. And we have a lot of conversations around like, and not it's not just her.
Yeah.
We've talked about this where it's like, oh, it's so sad that they're not gonna have kids, and I'm like, "Really?" I mean, I think they're okay with it. I'm pretty sure they're happy with their decision.
Exactly, exactly. It's like, why don't you just have one? Just to say you've
Oh
had
my gosh,
one.
and then you never hear the end of it. It's like the worst thing possible to an elder.
Right, right. Or they, like it's assumed that if you don't make it with a partner or with a husband, or if you don't do this whole thing that you're supposed to be doing, that you somehow failed or that you are not desired by men. And that apparently is a bad thing to do, to to not be
God
desired by men.
forbid that my existence is not related to how desirable I am to a man.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. It's intense. It's like that's a really it's hugely intense to like I'm still untangling in myself
Mhm, mhm.
that like my value, my worth is not inherently tied to how much I do for my family, how much I sacrifice for them, how good of a wife I am. Well, for different reasons, right? Like I don't cook for my husband, that kind of stuff. Like I'm still teasing that apart because it's so indoctrinated in me.
Right, right. It's
Mhm.
kind of like an immediate urge, like a reaction that you just have to be of service to men. I remember in a barbecue with some family, I was told, well, let's serve the boys first, and I'm like, no, they can serve themselves. I'm gonna get
No.
my plate.
Yeah, I'm like, well, first of all, I'm breastfeeding, so I'm gonna serve myself first, okay? I'm hungry. So, yeah, I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
honestly, and then the women, like, honestly, most of the time it's not all the time, but I feel like with my mom and stuff, I'm like, "She's doing so much." I'm like, "You need to be eating first. You're probably the hungriest person here."
You're the one that cooked it all, probably.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean,
We
there's
have
some learning there.
We have a comment here from Erica Ortiz Pelicer. Hola, Erica. Thank you for watching.
Hi,
She says,
Erica.
I believe that labeling oneself as Latina is a form of racial socialization that is vital to ethnic identity and important in the building of self esteem and positive self identity. Ethnic
Mhm.
identity is a protective factor for many Latinos and Latinas, protecting against racism and bias. And that's
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Did you want to say any comments that came up from that? That's a very good point, Erica.
Absolutely. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say yes. As bad as we can see all of the things that may not be the best things about it, there are many positive things about being Latina. About, of course, about the values, what we learn,
Uh-huh.
the skills that we get from our childhood or society. How we're prepared. Women are prepared to do it all and be on their own and do anything,
Mhm,
really.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
also, brings you close to your own community, like other Latinas. We relate to each other. We want to learn more about ourselves. So
Mhm,
I do know, and I do agree with you, Erica, that it is important for self-esteem and positive self-identity when we are able, I believe, and let me know if what you think, Claudia, too, on this. When we are able to tease out all of those things that keep us from really feeling liberated in this gender
Yeah.
role.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really agree with you there, and what I interpreted and think about what it is that you're saying. I think if I'm hearing you correctly, Erica, like I have to say, absolutely. Like I am such a proud Latina, like through and through, like absolutely. Um, and I think it was really hard for me when I like learned the different histories and the nuances of like what how like this identity came to be, because I'm like then I have to grapple with all of those different things and how I relate to it. And I think that's why I preface my answer with like
Hmm.
everybody relates to this identity differently. And like I know some folks that are like, I know that I'm labeled as Latina here in the US, but I'm indigenous
Hmm.
to the Americas. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's freaking wonderful. Like, I love
Right.
that too.
Right.
Because like, for me, it's most important to like have that autonomy to say, like, this is my identity and this is how I want to name myself. And like, that's such a powerful and empowering process for folks to have. That's why I love this type of conversation, because I'm like, yeah, like where did I come up with that name? Like where did that name come from? Like does that even feel like my name? Like that doesn't even feel just, yeah, like having that space to be able to
Hmm.
do that, because as we know, like the term Hispanic was
Oh yeah.
just put on the census and was like, oh, we're just going to group you all in together,
Right.
so that
Right.
wasn't even something that we named, that's not a name that we even took on for ourselves. So I think that's the piece that I'm like, yeah, if that's how you want to identify and that feels empowering to you, then hell yeah, by all means, yeah, because I feel that way too. Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the critical parts of this, that it's not and I think we do started off talking about some of the things that are challenging about the label, because I think that that's exactly what I bumped into when I came to this country. Everything was negative about being Latina. It was so bad that, like you
Hmm.
said, you wanted to not be associated with everybody else because of how negative Latinas are perceived here in the United States, and the label that's put on you. But once you learn, like, there is a lot of self-awareness and learning on our indigenous roots, our colonizer blood, and all our African descent blood. And there's grief in there too,
Hmm.
because I'm thinking, wow, I would never get to know, like, who were my indigenous ancestors, who, like,
Hmm.
what tribe, what place, what they lived through, and how they survived some of the things that happened during colonization, and not knowing about a big part of myself because of that,
Hmm.
right? And so it can be really empowering to get to know ourselves as women, as Latina women, and gain a lot of power from that too. So,
Yeah,
and that's
I agree. I
yeah.
agree.
Now, when we do have these things that are holding us back, for example, I remember that the moment I realized in my little, like, 16-year-old head, that I didn't have to worry about finding a husband and getting married before the age of 20, because of si no me se me iba a pasar el tren. Like, at 14, I thought my goal was to get married and have children. And the moment that clicked in my head, that's when I decided, you know what, I can actually go to college. I can actually do other things with my life that don't need to have this one goal that you
Mhm.
kind of groomed into, to think
Mhm.
and to believe. So how do we like break from away from that without feeling like we're betraying ourselves, our values, and our family?
Oof. That is such a good question. Yeah. I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to admit to oneself, like, this isn't for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, it could be anything, but like just space. Like sometimes it was like sometimes I need to be affirmed by somebody else, like you have permission. And then sometimes that permission just needs to come from inside of you. Um, but I think even before you take the permission, like just need a little bit of space for like the thought to creep in there and like not suppress the thought of like, yeah, maybe I want to go to college and not get married. Or like,
Mhm.
honestly, like for me, I was like, maybe, um, okay, this is gonna, I'm like totally gonna put myself out there for a moment, but I was like, I had this thought where I was like, there's no way that I could like this woman. And then I was like, but I do. So I there's so much that came up in that. So I was like, I think like just being able to like admit it to myself. And I was like, oh, so there was that. And then the sitting with all the different emotions that came up around like,
Right.
I don't have to follow exact things that it was that I thought that I was going to do or that my
Mhm.
family wanted for me.
Mhm.
Um, and like then I could kind of start to like pick and choose of like how do I want to have these conversations
Right.
with my family? Do I want to have those conversations with my family? How can I build some skills around communicating what my boundaries are around having conversations with my family around what it is that I want to do? That's like a learned thing. Like we
Mhm.
don't really
Mhm.
talk about how to create and then sustain boundaries with our folks. Like that's
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what comes up for you.
Yeah, I know. I think it does come up, just thinking about how like I've had my experience of being Latina and breaking away from a lot of things that I believe I did not I didn't really want for me. I think they were placed in my mind from a young age. That is not an idea that came out of what I wanted, right? It's something that was just there that held some sort of value in society, like having children. It's a choice that I have chosen not to, and I still don't want to. And for a Latina to say that, oh my gosh, that is like what is going on. And I think you have to, and just kind of go ahead and live your own life. And
Mhm.
I see the a comment here from Dr. Renteria. You tell people your truth and create your own story. Know the risks and fear, but do not derail from yourself.
Mhm.
Pretty much staying true to yourself and what you decide to do with your journey. But I also think that many times there are parts of our community where we're not even aware that these things have been implanted in our minds from a
For
young age.
sure. Yeah.
So we're not aware that some of the decisions we've made have been done by other forces, not really because it's actually what people have desired and or wanted for themselves. And the pressure, the social pressure, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Social pressure.
I mean, you're talking about such like what I feel is such a I don't know if nuance is the right word, but part of the reason why I love space being held, whether that's with like a medicine person or a therapist or like a really trusted friend, is that like the space to be able to examine that like is this belief or value even really my own?
Mm-hmm.
Like and like there is a point in time where there may be a realization of this belief and value was my own and now it is no longer.
Right.
And that's in and of itself its own process. Like I'm going to let it go now. And then there's that whatever emotion comes up with that is so um it just gets to be held in whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it gets messy. It could feel sad, it could feel angry, it could feel guilty, all of those things. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the major forces that cause Latinas to kind of submit or do what the role and tells you to do in the those parts that derail you from other things that you truly want is the guilt, right? Dealing with the guilt or disappointing people that you love, because we are a very family oriented culture. So
Mhm.
disappointing those that love you, those that actually in their minds believe they know what's best for you, right?
Oh my
um
god, yes. Mhm.
because as a Latina, I don't know about you, but it's not it always sounds like there's somebody who has to take care of you for some reason, whether it is
Yeah, you couldn't possibly know as a woman what's best for you. Like, that's literally the messaging that I've always
Mhm.
gotten. No, I know you better than you know yourself. You couldn't possibly know
Right,
what's
right.
best,
Exactly.
which is awful.
It and it also like if it leaves you out there just dealing with like the risk of taking making decisions that people may not agree with, um but also the guilt, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I still get hit with the, well, just have one kid just to say that you
Just to
had.
say you did it. How horrible. How I just wanted to see what it was like. Can you imagine?
It's like it's not like drinking a different kind of coffee that you're just gonna take,
Exactly.
right? But
Yeah.
it's an entire child, human being, and lifestyle change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complete portal vortex
Yeah,
of
yeah,
transformation. Like, there's
exactly.
no turning back.
And I see Roseanne also commented, I agree. I was told that I was selfish for having my own ideas and goals.
You
So,
know,
yeah.
yeah. Like, in the context of a collectivist culture where folks are holding, like, "No, you need to believe and do what I want you to do and believe." Sure, that's
Yeah,
selfish. Yeah, fine. But also, like, fine, I'll be selfish then.
yeah. And so what, right? What comes after that? What is so bad about putting yourself first, right?
Yeah,
Because it
exactly.
goes against the value of sacrificing
Yes.
for others.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way to, like, not I mean, I'm saying that in a really calloused way, but I think there is an opportunity for there to be a lot of vulnerability and compassion and kindness in saying, like, "I know I've upheld this type of relationship with you where I've sacrificed to be who you want me to be, and now I'm gonna choose a different way to be in the relationship." I imagine that that might be hard for you.
Hmm, hmm. It's I think that's one of the things that my clients do struggle, and well, I've struggled too in my own like journey trying to break
Totally.
away from things. And so of just figuring out how much uncomfortable guilt am I
Mhm.
tolerating, and at that point, right, and how much I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with, right?
Yeah, it's all about how much you can tolerate, right?
Right, right. And thinking of how women, how Latinas can break out of that guilt is really like, I think the best way is just thinking about, okay, so what if it happens? You disappoint
Yeah.
everybody. You
Yeah,
disappoint
what's gonna happen?
everybody. Are they gonna
Mhm.
stop loving you and
Mhm.
cut you off? Or, and if that does happen, then you know what? That was part of this process where maybe there are people that can come with your next journey, right?
Yeah, and
So
that's also a choice too, like, it I
right.
mean, depending on, like, age and financial situation and housing situation and these very real, things that, like, are very direct impact of your livelihood,
Hmm, hmm.
sometimes you might have to choose, like, not disclosing something
Right.
about yourself, to, like, be able to stay in the relationship, but then that is its own process too, and then that there's always that other option where you can, and it might mean that there might be a break in the relationship as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I think if a relationship cannot sustain, kind of like full acceptance of one another with vulnerability and like
Yeah.
those conversations, it's really hard then to have close relationships with people that may not be okay with your decisions, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Th
it's a process.
this comes up with my parents, particularly with my mom and I often because she is very, very Christian, and I'm just not. I just don't believe in the same way that she believes. I hold faith very differently.
Hmm.
And it's a conversation that came up often, and I was like I just really felt my little girl come forward and say, like, "If I tell you that I don't believe in the same way you believe, will you still love me?"
Right, right, right. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, she was like thankfully, she was like, "Yeah, I will. I'll love you. I may not agree with you, but" and also, like, that could also change in the future.
Hmm, hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, that's hard to say, like, I don't wanna be separated from you, but I wanna also live authentically." Mhm.
Right, right. And there's one aspect of it being like the family unit that you have to manage those relationships in order to figure what you truly desire to do, or like your
Mhm.
own choices, or discovering yourself, but also like society. I mean, I still get hit with, and when you're gonna get married, and where's the boyfriend?
Yes,
Where's the
yes,
child?
yes.
I mean, it's just nonstop. We can't change what society is going to do yet. Like, we can change one by one, like educating, but
Yeah,
we can't, like, if I meet a new group of people tomorrow, then I know that those questions are still gonna be in there.
for sure, yeah.
Um,
Collectively, we're not there yet. Mhm.
right, right. So how have you seen that there are effective ways to deal with that, just in it, to be respectful to the culture, but also not, you know set boundaries with that.
I mean, I think this is such a dynamic question. Like there's so many different possibilities and in ways to be able to meet folks in that. Um, one being like for at least for me and speaking with from my own experience, like what feels true is just understanding and having an awareness of where I am in that moment. Like literally just pausing and taking a breath.
Hmm.
Because there are days where I'm going to be like really resource and going to be able to like just, go with the flow and go to bat and be like either laugh it off or like have a serious conversation where I can be educating the person, or like going more into detail than like in a very generous way, like going into detail about my situation. And there are going to be days where I'm like, no, that is pissing me the F off. And I could just go off on somebody right now.
Right.
Um, so like I think having a little bit of space to understand like, well, where am I at? Just like where's my baseline? And then having some tools and some phrases that like feel real and authentic to me to say, I'm not answering questions about that right now.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot, it's, oh, when are you going to have your next kid? Are you going to have another baby? That's also super true.
It never
And
ends. Yeah.
go ahead.
Primero te dicen, first, where's the boyfriend? Okay, when are y'all gonna get married? Okay, then when are you gonna have a baby? Then when you're gonna have a second baby? It's like,
Mhm.
the woman, a life of a woman, and it has more, like, it's always pressure, societal
Yeah.
pressure, and it does. I might be wrong, but it does give the men more flexibility in those things. Not that they don't have the same pressures, but that in it's always the woman who needs to get it together and do it, and get married and seek that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. There's a lot of, like, holding and pushing forward. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of and yeah, in many, many ways, there's, like I'm realizing so much in what it is that you're saying. There's, like, the waiting game when you're not yet married, where you're, like, you have to do all the right things to catch the
Mhm.
husband, and then you're really driving the
Yeah.
family after that. You're like, yeah, I mean, it's really an interesting experience.
It's a lot of, I think, and there's nothing wrong with marriage and kids. It's just not for everyone.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with getting married and wanting that and truly desiring that for yourself.
for
It's
sure.
more of
Yeah.
it's more of the setup script that's there already for you without you even consenting to it, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm huge on consent. And I love that you said that. Like, do I even want this?
Yeah.
Hmm.
You're the one that has to live with it, like, it's not, other people will not be, living with your decisions unless that they directly affect it, but
Yeah. It's honestly, and here's a hot take. It's a question that I ask myself every single day because God forbid that you get married and then you have a divorce with
oh
children.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But it's like one of the reasons why I wanted to marry my partner is because I was like, we will both ask ourselves that question all the time. Do we want to do this? Because then that's a different way to be in relationship with each other. But I feel like that's true, not just, and that's not specific to marriage. Like that's true of when you're just interrogating or investigating your own values and beliefs. Is this my
exactly.
own? Do I want to do this? Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. So guilt is really something that it's so powerful. Like I think it's used so much for many things, like even to create spaces where things are not safe in within you know, family unit society and everything. So it's one of the things that can help with that. I think it's just processing that with other Latinas, other women, but also therapy can be
Mhm.
really helpful to kind of tease out all of those inner, you know, inner thoughts and ideas. I've had clients that I send them to read a book about, you know, Marianismo, which is the female gender role, so that they
Mhm.
become more self-aware about all these like commandments that we have and things like that, and how so much of that is so ingrained in us that we still practice it even if we're you know, so you know, not conscious about it.
Yeah.
um you know, being I catch myself still in meetings with men that I'm too quiet, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I have things to say, why am I not saying them? Let me just, you know, continue practicing that skill of, you know, no voy a quedarme callada, you know, like I need to
Yep.
say something, I'm going to say something, or being interrupted, like allowing being interrupted. Many times I don't, but I do catch myself every now and then, like going back to that just automatic, you know, script.
Yep. Yeah. Wait, there was a meme not that long ago that was like, "I'm talking."
Yeah,
I forget
yeah.
who it was. Yeah. Was it the vice president? Anyway, whatever. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when I consider that and when I reflect on it, the number one okay, there's two things that come up for me. And the number one thing that comes up for me is checking in with yourself,
Hmm, hmm.
like slowing down and having awareness of your internal experience. And then two, like having a solid person or people who will remind you of who the F you are.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, because I get mommy guilt all the time, like,
Hmm,
or just in general. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, I need to reality test that because I'm like, I'm actually doing a lot. Like, I'm a good mom.
hmm.
So why am I feeling bad? And then,
Right.
so that's the one thing I'm like, and I can investigate that. So I can like be in that process of like, basically like catch and release. Like I feel the guilt and then I have to release it. And then the second part is like having friends affirm, like, no,
Hmm,
you are doing it. You are doing a good job
right.
or whatever it is, right? Like in my case, it's the mommy thing, but like it could be different. Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I do catch myself too thinking in my own, I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, like, but very, very smaller part of me now. It used to be a bigger part of me
Mhm.
that would
Yeah.
question like all my decisions. Like, did I actually choose what I wanted to do? Or did I just wanted to rebel against this whole script that I did
Yeah.
not, you know, I did not want to follow, right? This traditional thing of, you know, no, for even the way that we speak about how women have a family, have a life, start a family, but you know, be, you can't just be living your life without one, right? You're waiting, like you said, you're in the waiting game.
Mhm. Mhm.
And why are you waiting though? Like that, you're living your life still. You're not. That's not that. Your purpose is not to just do that one thing. But a small part of me is like, oh my gosh, what would have been of my life had I just gone ahead and gotten married at 20 something and done
Ooh.
all these things. You know, I think that I would have, yeah, I would have not been okay with that, you know, other version of Anna.
Mhm.
Because you know, enjoying your life is really what this is about, and having great relationships with others. And to me, like even thinking about, you know, empowering and creating spaces where Latinas can come together and heal together, because we
Yeah.
do need the support.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Mhm.
Yeah. So to remind you of who the F you are, you said.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. And this is a topic that I think we can be talking for days, and we won't have something a stopping point. But this could be, just to start to many other conversations that can come in the future about just Latina and identity, and also understanding more about those aspects. If anybody has any questions, you guys can post them on the chat. We're going to be I'm going to be just summarizing a little bit of what we have talked about today. But yes, I do think that this is something that could create a lot more spaces in the future that we can talk about more in depth, because we are talking about the identity of being, you know a Latina, right?
Yeah,
There's so much more that to being a
totally.
Latina than just
Absolutely.
like gender, right? it's There's so much more, and we can probably be doing this all night. Is there anything that you would like to tell all of the Latinas and the allies or Latina allies watching, um, about just how to support women and how they can seek that support themselves?
Ooh. Honestly, I mean, like, I feel like the phrase that comes to mind is like, just do you, boo boo. But I mean, like, really, truly, like, you can give yourself permission to really do what it is that you want to do. Like, it doesn't have to be anybody else's dream for you. Like, you can imagine and dream up whatever life that it is that you want and go for that. And live out your wildest dreams, like, the meme or the all of the t-shirts and stuff that say like, I'm my ancestors wildest dreams. Like, you got that. Like, you can do
Mhm,
that. And I think that that's
mhm.
really what I want to say. Everything else, like, you can create around you to support it. Hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I know we can be here all day, but we're gonna close up because I think we've taken we went a little bit over 30 minutes, but that's okay. It's a good
Thank
conversation
you.
to have. And thank you everybody who has been watching and stopping by, and those of you who you will be watching this later on as well. I wanted to oh, I have a comment here that says, what do these topics happen for those younger Latinas? What happens for these youngsters? Um, for younger Latinas, so like teenagers and maybe like young women, what do you think? What are some of the things that, what are your thoughts about this question? So what do you think?
I think that I'd be curious to know if you're talking about like young adults or teens, but my experience of like the younger Latinas, like the younger generations, is that they're really experiencing, especially like second and third gen, experiencing stuff. Yes, for those younger than us, experiencing themselves differently in all of like what our culture is steeped in now,
Yeah.
and thinking about bending the binaries just across the board. So
Mhm.
everything is kind of like being queered. And so, I think about like the young Latinas that it is that I have contact with is just very much um, like in their own element, and just so much more readily stepping into like, I don't have to take that on. Why?
Mhm.
Why would I do that? So, I mean, I think it's like really cool to see that. I'm not saying that they're not without any issues, but like that's really what I experience it as. I don't, how is it for you?
Well, I think that younger, Latinas have, a higher confusion, right? And because they are not just going through adolescence, right, which is a very hard um, developmental stage, in where you are trying to identify who you are, what you believe in, and trying to develop that self identity. But it's also an opportunity, right, to free them from those expectations within families and also the societal breakage. I do see that the younger generation, teenagers nowadays, have access to so much more information, so they're a
Hmm.
lot more informed, which is a positive thing. They can see other perspectives, they can see more out there. They can also see a little bit more women, Latinas, who are represented in spaces of power. Not
Hmm.
a lot, not a whole lot, but now there's a couple more out there that they can see. So I think that showing Latinas their possibilities of life, of what could be for you. I know, I remember when I was a teenager, I think that for me was a completely different experience because I grew up in a society where I used to see women in power all the time because women were in those positions, right? They were
Hmm.
doctors, they could be, all of these other so for me the possibilities of getting there weren't unreachable. But in the United States we see, because of oppression, because of repressing all of the minority groups, it's harder to get to those spaces of power. But I do think that showing Latinas the possibilities and also breaking them free from just thinking about whether reflecting on whether they can actually is this actually what I want, or is this something that was a belief and idea that was implanted in my mind from the time that I was young, that I should be doing this, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
So really, really a lot more self-reflection, I would say, for younger teens, and spaces of support for them as well.
agreed.
Yeah. But and like I said, we can talk about this all day.
Oh my
um,
gosh, yes, forever.
forever. And we'll be hosting. It looks like we can be hosting a whole nother charla de estas. A little bit more um, the diverse in a way to talk about the diverse identities of Latinas
Oh
too,
yeah,
because there's so much more here. We just like went at the very top
yeah,
of the iceberg.
yep,
But it's good to start thinking about this and become more empowered as we move as we move forward. Thank you, Claudia, for being here today, and thank you for triggering this conversation to go to places that can be helpful out there. I see some people are saying, I love this conversation. And thank you, Kimberly, thank you for being here. She's an Hondureña who's very empowered as well. She's in a PhD program. Very, very
awesome,
smart lady. So we have this is going to be airing, and I wanted to thank you again for being here, and thank you everybody that's been watching. And watch out for our next charla. We will be discussing and some more amazing topics we've got coming up. um, well, coming up in December, really. We have charlas on el trauma en los adolescentes, and we have another charla on in September and December on el autismo en la comunidad latina. So we have a lot of other interesting topics that we'll be covering. But of course, Claudia, I would invite you to come back and let's have what does it mean to be Latina no, number two conversation.
yeah. Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much to you. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in now, and then also for folks who are going to be listening later. Thank you so much. Such an important conversation and a very rich one. And thank you for all the work that you do, Dr. Sierra.
No, thank you. You're doing amazing work. We're one person at a time, right? We're doing all of this. So feel free to contact Claudia. This I'm gonna show you here her social media, so you can contact her on Instagram at is Claudia Parada. And there is a LinkedIn information too, Claudia Parada and claudiaparadaenergy.com. That's her website. And you can people can contact you if you have questions, and you can
Absolutely.
contact me. My website is at the bottom. It's kind of just roaming around at the bottom if you want to learn more about my practice as well. But thank you so much, and everybody have a nice Thursday, a safe Thursday, and hopefully a really amazing weekend coming up.
Yep.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.